All right. So we are going to start. I am aware that you know how to do this, right?
Yep.
But I want to review the process because what we do here, we're going to do the exact same thing, almost exact, with some letters in a minute. So remember back in the day when you did long division, you started and you asked, what times 14 gives you 87? Well, it's not going to come out even. It's going to have to be something close. 14 times what is 87?
6.
Should we believe him?
Sure.
Maybe like a 17.
He says 6. You might want to use a calculator. And what do? You put the 6 up here, and what's the next step?
You find what 6 times 14 is?
You multiply, right? You multiply. So 6 times 4 is 24. And then don't I have to multiply times the 1 also? 6 times 1 is 6, 2 more. So it's 84. Then what did you do?
Subtracted.
Subtract next. And when you subtract, which digit do you subtract? It's a trick question. You have to subtract both, right? You have to subtract all of this. 7 take away 4 is, and 8 take away 8, nothing. So that one drops out. Then what do? Yeah, you bring down the 3 and you start all over again. You bring down the 3 and then you ask, what times 14 gives you 33? 2. And you put the 2 up here, and then what? Multiply times both. 2 times 4 is? 2 times 1 is? And what do? You subtract. You subtract. And remember, you're going to subtract both digits, right? In order to do that, I think I need to borrow. 13 take away 8. What's 2 take away 2?
0.
Drops out. Before you learned about decimals, you were done here. There's nothing else to bring down. So I've got a 5. And remember, at some time, you put an R5 there, remainder of 5. But you can also do, I've got 5 left over, and what did I divide by? 14. So I've got 5 14ths left. 5 divided by 14 left. There's my answer. Right? Do you remember that? Well, today we're going to do the same thing, except now we're going to do it with letters in there. Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Settle down, settle down. So I want to divide this thing by x minus 2. Which one goes on the outside of the divide sign? The bottom, right? The x minus 2 goes on the outside. And on the inside, I've got the other thing, x to the third minus 5x squared plus 4x, take away 2. One thing you want to make sure of, are you listening? When you put these in here, they have to go in order. You start with your biggest power of x, which is x to the third. And they have to go in order down from there. So x to the third, x to the second, x to the first, x to the 0. If they're not in order, you've got to rearrange them and make them in order. And they all have to be there. X to the third, x to the second, x to the first, to the 0. To the 3, to the 2, to the 1, to the 0. Right? If they're not in order, you're going to end up with a big mess. If they're not in order, you're going to end up with a big mess. Now, from here, you start. and you ask, what times x gives me x to the third? What do you multiply x by to get x to the third? X squared, x to the second. What did you do over there once you put something up on top? You multiplied, didn't you? What is x squared times x? What is x squared times negative 2? Right? Once you're done multiplying, what's the next step? You got to subtract all of that. Right? Right? I feel like I see a lot of zoners.
Oh, I'm sorry, I paid attention.
Got a lot of zoners. Are we here? So now we have to subtract. What is x to the third? Take away x to the third.
Nothing.
Nothing. Drops out. But be careful here. I've got negative 5x squared, and I'm subtracting negative. That's like adding it. Negative 5x squared plus 2x squared. Negative 3x squared. Right? Negative 5 plus 2. I borrowed $5 and I paid back 2. I still owe 3. Now what? After you subtract, you drop down the next thing. So I'm going to bring down the 4x, and we got to start the whole thing all over again. So you ask, what times x gives me negative 3x squared? Well, would you agree it's going to have to start with negative 3? What times x is x squared? After you put it up there, what's the next step? Multiply. Negative 3x times x. Negative 3x times negative 2. What's negative 3 times negative 2? 6x. Then what? Did you say subtract? Subtract the whole bunch, the whole thing. When you subtract negative here, that's going to really be like adding it, right? Negative 3x squared plus 3x squared drops out. 4x, I'm subtracting 6x. What's 4x? Take away 6x.
Negative 2.
Negative 2x. Now what? I got one more thing to bring down. Oh my. Now what? What times x gives me negative 2x? What's negative 2 times x? What's negative 2 times negative 2?
4.
4. Positive 4. And what will I do now?
Subtract.
Subtract. And I have to remember I'm subtracting all of that. I'm subtracting negative, so really that's like adding. Negative 2x plus 2x drops out. Negative 2 take away 4. Negative 2 minus 4. Negative 6. Nothing else to bring down, right? So the last thing you're going to do is minus 6 over, what did you divide by? And right there, that is my answer. And of course, you don't get credit for that answer unless you have this underneath it. Right? Does that make sense? It's just exactly that same process over there. But with letters, it seems a little bit more confusing, but it's really not. One thing I want to point out, when you go to subtract this, what happened to the first thing? It dropped out. What happened to the first thing here? Dropped out. What happened to the first thing here? It dropped out. That first thing should always drop out. If it doesn't, something's wrong somewhere. If it doesn't drop out, something's wrong somewhere. Right? Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? I'm not going to do this whole thing right here, but I thought I would set it up for you. Which one goes outside? The bottom. X plus 4 goes outside. And that means the other one goes inside. What's my biggest power of x up there?
X to the third.
So 2x to the third. What comes next?
-29.
Well, remember they need to go in order. X to the third, x to the second, x to the first, x to the 0. Where's the x to the 2?
Hiding.
There aren't any, right? How many x to the seconds do I have? 0. So in this box here, you have to put 0x to the second. If any of those are missing, you need to put in a 0. And then I can keep going, x to the first, x to the 0. So that they go in order, x to the second, x to the third, to the second, to the first, to the 0. They have to go in order. And if any of them are missing, like this right here, you have to put it in there. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the big mess. Look over here. X to the thirds line up. X to the seconds line up. X to the seconds line up. Regular old x's line up. If you forget to put in 0x to the second, they're not going to line up like this. You're going to have x to the seconds take away regular old numbers, and it won't work. So make sure if anything is missing, you put in 0 of those. Got it? Got it? Got it? Do you have questions? Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? 1 to 30, my book says. Page 366 I'm on. I have WE. 1